welcome to Storytime and Crafternoon. I'm Karen Maness, Director of Children's Ministries at Sunrise United Methodist Church. This is our last in the series, Journey to the Star, and we've been looking at how people and even animals found baby Jesus that very first Christmas. And this week we're going to shift focus just a little bit as we read this book. We're going to learn about a boy who has a tough decision to make. And I think that really gets to the heart of how we journey to the star and how we journey closer to Jesus during Christmas. We think about all the different ways that we can serve God and how we can do His will. And Jacob has a tough choice to make in this book, and we'll see what decision he makes as we read Jacob's Gift, written by Max Lucado and illustrated by Robert Hunt. Rabbi Simeon brushed the sawdust off his hands and began untying his apron. "Before you leave today, I have a special announcement." He hung the apron on a wooden peg and turned to look at the handful of boys in his shop. All but one apprentice had removed their aprons and put away their tools. Rabbi Simeon looked across the workshop. One boy continued sawing a piece of wood. "Jacob," the rabbi instructed, "our work is finished for the day. Put away your tools." Jacob didn't respond. The only sound he heard was the swish, swish of the saw. And now, swish, swish, was the only sound anyone heard. But Jacob didn't know that. The other boys in the shop began to snicker. Rabbi Simeon let out a deep sigh and shook his head. But he wasn't mad. Down deep, he was pleased. He, too, knew what it was like to get lost in the world of woodworking. But it was time to go home. "Jacob," the rabbi called again, his voice a bit louder this time. The sawing stopped when Jacob heard no other noise. He knew he'd done it again. Slowly he placed his saw on the table. "I'm sorry, Rabbi," he said softly. Rabbi Simeon smiled. "It's all right. Put away your tools and hang up your apron." Jacob quickly cleaned off his work area. With a sigh, he stood and walked across the room, never looking up. This was the part he hated most. Everyone was looking at him. He hung up his apron as the other boys continued to snicker. Jacob's cheeks burned. Finally, the rabbi spoke, and all eyes turned back to him. "As I said earlier, my nephew from Nazareth should be here within a few days. He is a master carpenter who knows quality work. He will help me select one of you for a special task. The one who builds the best project will work with me on the new synagogue." "It will be me." The words were so strong in Jacob's thoughts, he feared he had spoken them out loud. Only days earlier he'd overheard the rabbi say, "Just leave Jacob alone with wood and he can do almost anything." Jacob had turned red then, too, but that time with pride. "I just have to be chosen," Jacob determined. "I want to use my hands to help build God's house. It doesn't matter that everyone says I'm so shy. This time." "Jacob, did you hear what I said?" No, sir." "I'll be away for the next 3 days, but you may all use the workshop to finish your projects." As the others began to leave, the rabbi asked Jacob to stay. Again, Jacob felt his cheeks warm. He waited till everyone had left and then approached the carpenter. "I'm sorry, Rabbi," he apologized. "I'll do better next time." The rabbi motioned for Jacob to sit on one of the stools. "Oh, Jacob, you've done nothing wrong. I asked you to stay so I could tell you something." The rabbi smiled, pulled up a stool, and sat down. He placed his big hand on Jacob's shoulder and began. "God has given you the gift of woodworking. What is difficult for many is easy for you. Surely you've noticed." Jacob nodded slowly. He had wondered why Other boys struggled with the wood to make things that seemed so simple to him. God gives gifts, Jacob. Some can sing, others teach, and you can build. You have a special gift. Have you ever wondered why God gave you this gift? So I can learn to be a good carpenter? He guessed. Well, the rabbi chuckled, not exactly. God gave you this gift to share with others. Let's say you gave a present to one of my daughters. How do you think that would make me feel? Happy? Of course. Even though you gave the gift to my child, I would feel like you had given it to me. God is like that too. When we give a gift to one of his children, it's like giving a gift to God. If you ever have a chance to help somebody, remember what I told you. Now, run home and tell your father that I hope he has an inn full of guests next week. That evening at supper, Jacob's father reminded him of the days ahead. We're expecting a lot of business, son. I'll get up early, promised Jacob. I will work on my project in the mornings and help you in the evenings. The next 3 mornings, Jacob crawled out of bed while it was still dark and went to the workshop. With a fire going and a lamp burning, he worked hard to complete his project. The other boys had laughed when he told them what he was going to build, but now that it was almost finished, they weren't laughing anymore. Jacob was building a new kind of animal feed trough. His would have wheels. He got the idea while watching some men work in the stable next to his father's inn. They loaded a wagon full of hay, rolled it into the shed, and dumped it in the trough. He thought, why not put wheels on the trough? And that's what Jacob was planning to do. Jacob had returned to the workshop after helping his father at the inn. Rabbi Simeon will be here tomorrow. I must finish tonight, thought the sleepy boy. Jacob looked at the trough and then at the 4 wheels piled on his workbench. So much work still to do. He was so tired. Maybe if I close my eyes for a few minutes. In what seemed like the very next moment, a beam of starlight slipped through a crack and fell across Jacob's snapping eyes. What? He shouted, startled by the sudden light. Had he slept through the night? Then he looked out and saw the village showered by a gleaming, shimmering light in the night. Jacob rubbed the sleep from his eyes as he walked outside and toward the star that seemed to dance in the sky near his father's inn. Then he heard a strange sound in the stable behind the inn. Quietly, Jacob crept closer. He looked through a knothole in the stable wall. There, in a tiny nest of straw on the ground, was a baby. Beside the baby knelt his mother. A man gently covered her with his cloak. The baby must be uncomfortable on the ground, Jacob thought. Quickly, Jacob turned and raced back to the workshop. He stood beside his newly built feed trough. He had measured each board so carefully. He had cut each piece with skill. He had oiled it with care. It was the best work Jacob had ever done. Tomorrow, the rabbi would select the best apprentice. But tonight there's a new baby without a place to sleep. Good morning, boys, said Rabbi Simeon. This is the big day. Jacob approached the rabbi. Sir, I need to tell you something. Later, Jacob. We need to get everything ready for my nephew. Here, help me. The rabbi's voice drifted off as he began to take the projects outside. An unfinished chair, a desk with one leg too short, and a wobbly stool. Then, looking at a stack of 4 wheels, he asked, "Where's your project, Jacob?" "That's what I tried to tell you. Something happened. There was this big star and—" "Uncle Simeon! Joseph!" Simeon shouted, extending his arms. "I'm so glad you're here." Jacob's eyes widened. This was the man he had seen with the baby in the stable the night before. With one arm still around Joseph, the rabbi turned to Jacob. "Jacob, this is my nephew from Nazareth." Jacob was too surprised to speak, so Joseph spoke in his place. "We've already met," said Joseph, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "In fact, Jacob gave my newborn son his very first gift." "Your son?" the rabbi inquired. "What son? Where is he?" "Come, and I'll show you." And the rabbi and Jacob hurried behind Joseph. Joseph led them around a curve and down a hill toward the inn. "Did you stay at the inn, Joseph?" "Not quite. It was too full." Joseph smiled. "Then where did you stay?" asked Rabbi Simeon. "You'll see." Joseph led them past the inn to the bottom of the hill. There he left the path and turned toward a shelter. "The stable?" Simeon asked. "You kept your baby in a—" Joseph smiled and placed a finger to his lips. "Quiet, Uncle. They're asleep. Follow me." He lowered his head and entered the stable. A cow mooed at the presence of the trio. Joseph stepped next to the trough and motioned for them to approach. When the rabbi and his student looked inside, they saw a beautiful newborn baby. "His name is Jesus," Joseph whispered, "and he has a cradle fit for a king." Joseph's kindness made Jacob's cheeks turn red, but he felt so good seeing the baby asleep in the feed trough he had made. "Now I see why your project was missing," said the rabbi, "and it is the finest project I've seen. You will be the one to help build God's house. But tell me, why did you decide to give your feed trough away?" Jacob smiled with delight. "I remembered what you said, Rabbi. When you give a gift to one of God's children, you give a gift to God," said the boy. The rabbi's voice was soft. "And so you have, my son. So you have." I really loved our book this week because it helps us get ready for 2021 and thinking about how Jacob had this really tough decision to make. He had made this trough and he was going to submit it in this competition, and then he realized there was a baby that had no place to sleep. And so I thought it'd be a fun idea to have a memory verse that has to do with loving each other, because that's why Jesus came to earth, and that's why the boy in the book made the tough decision to give his trough over to be used as a cradle for the newborn baby. And so I thought we could make something to help us remember this Bible verse about loving one another. And so we're going to make our very own cradle here. So you have a brown piece of paper that looks like this in your kit. And you're just going to fold it over in half. And then you're going to take each of these halves and fold them down. So you're going to fold this down. And then you're going to fold this down. And then we've actually, if you've noticed, we've made our very own cradle. It stands up. And it looks probably something like the cradle or the feeding trough that baby Jesus was in. And so we have all these pieces, and I thought they looked a little bit like bales of hay or maybe strands of hay. And we can actually use this and practice putting our verse in order. and taking them apart and seeing if we can get them to go back in the same order to make our Bible verse here. And so this is a nice little holder for your Bible verse pieces, and try switching these around and seeing if you can get these to be in the correct order back in your little manger here. So the next thing that you're going to notice is something that looks like this, and it has these tabs on the side, and there's 3 of them. And as we journey to put God first in 2021, we can think about others, we can devote more time and spend time with God and pray for others and read our Bible. And these are all things that are going to put God first in our lives in 2021. And we know that's the most important thing that we can do as we go forward in this year. So several things that you can do is you can take this book, and I want you to spend the whole year filling it up with different things. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So you're going to have one tab, and I want you to write on there, prayer list. And you have a pencil. It's already been sharpened. It's in your packet. So you can write that on one of the tabs. And then a little ways farther into your pad, you have another tab. And you could write prayers answered on that tab as well. So we have people that you're praying for, and then the ways that God answers prayers. And then the last tab that you're going to see is your favorite Bible passages, or and you could put like and stories. So maybe Bible verses, stories that you really loved. And you could use your markers, or if you have some stickers at home you wanted to decorate the different pages with too, you could do that. But the most important thing is whenever you pray for someone or you hear of some sort of need, I want you to write it on these pages that are behind your first tab. And then every time you notice that something amazing has happened, or maybe somebody that was sick got better after you prayed for them, you're going to write it on those pages. And then as you read Bible stories, as you read Bible verses and learn them, you can write them in here. You could even draw some little pictures from some of your favorite Bible stories and include them in this part of your booklet. And the great thing is that by the time that you get through this year, you can look back and you can remember all the ways that God has been working and all the ways that you have journeyed to be closer to God as well. Another thing you're going to notice is that you have a card and you have an envelope. And the envelope has the address of somebody in Sunrise that I thought would enjoy or appreciate getting a special card in the mail that's been made and directed and decorated by you. And it's already got a stamp on it, so you don't have to search around for a stamp. It's already got the address written on it. And my son went ahead and decorated his, and it's got a Bible verse on the front to encourage people, and wrote a little note in it. And so I want you to do the same. I want you to decorate it with the markers that are included in your kit. Write your name, write a little note in there, and then put this in the mailbox with an adult to help you get it in the mailbox. And this will be a really special way to reach out to others. And I want us to journey closer to God. And one way that we can journey closer to God is to do things for God, to think about ways that we can serve others instead of just serving ourselves or our wants and needs. We can think more about others and ways that we can serve them as well. And you'll also notice that I found this worksheet, which includes a couple different verses from the Bible about loving each other. So I thought this would be a fun thing that you could do as well. I hope you enjoyed this Storytime and Crafternoon just as much as I did. I especially enjoyed reading this book and learning about how this boy makes a really tough decision, but he ultimately decides that he should do something to serve the baby Jesus. We can do things every day to serve baby Jesus and to do God's will in our lives. And that's what Christmas is really all about, becoming closer to Jesus this season.